I knew I didn't exist the day they launched my product and spelled my name wrong in the Slack announcement. Not a typo, just not there. A confetti GIF rained down, tagged every dev, intern, and the office plant, but not the woman who designed the goddamn skeleton they stapled their dreams onto. I sat at my kitchen counter, chewing dry cereal at 10 p.m., watching my own architecture get live-streamed by Darren's spreadsheet Sultan Jacobs like he coded it himself between CrossFit sets and oat milk lattes. Officially, I was a freelance UX strategist. Unofficially, I was the duct tape holding the circus tent upright, wireframing entire features from napkin concept to Figma prototype, writing logic trees at 3 a.m. because the junior backend dev panicked and accidentally deployed to prod, coaching interns on how to run user interviews while Darren was busy visioneering in Napa with his crypto VC buddies. They paid me by the hour, no benefits, no equity, no meetings I was required to join, yet when the app crashed on launch day, I was the one they called. At 5:12 a.m., while I was using a spatula to kill a spider in my shower. And sure, I could have left. I told myself that once a real contract came, I'd finally take that gym tour or schedule the dental cleaning I'd canceled 3 years in a row. But Darren always dangled just enough promise to keep me around. "You're part of the DNA," he'd say, flashing that frat boy smirk like he invented humility. I guess in some twisted way, I did believe that if the product took off, he'd finally bring me in for real. Put me on the team, give me a title, maybe even, I don't know, remember my damn birthday. Spoiler, that never happened. Instead, I got gaslighted by omission. My name vanished from product documentation. Someone root-loaded the Notion roadmap I wrote and scrubbed the author history. The Confluence credit log, gone. When I asked about it, Darren said, "Oh weird, must have been a permissions thing. You know how SA-S tools are." Yeah, SA-S tools and founders allergic to attribution. Oh, by the way, if you're still listening and enjoying the story, you do us a tiny favor and hit that subscribe button? 97% of you don't, and yeah, it kinda breaks our nerdy little hearts. Helps the team, keeps the chaos coming. All right, back to it. The startup Codexly was a beautiful disaster. A Frankenstein of half-baked aspirations and overpromised roadmaps duct-taped together by caffeine and survivor's guilt. The engineers were overworked, the product managers were infants with Jira boards, and the office fridge had a kombucha that predated COVID. And in the middle of it all was Darren, strutting around like a discount Steve Jobs with Google Sheets instead of charisma. He didn't ask for progress. He barked it from Slack channels titled things like #blitzscale and #moonshot. He'd rewrite my update tickets with his own bullet points, then forward them to investors like he had personally coded the algorithm I'd stitched together during a week-long migraine. Darren didn't build, he rebranded. My UX heuristics doc became his user empathy thesis. My early accessibility features, culture-first inclusivity layer. And every damn time I brought it up, he'd say, "Come on, it's all one team. Don't get precious about credit." Precious? You ever get precious about 112 unpaid hours of backend testing while your client's dog eats your keyboard cable mid-deploy? What really gnawed at me wasn't the long hours. It was the invisibility. The way they'd call me when shit broke, then forget I existed once things worked again. Like I was some ghost plumber haunting their codebase. I started getting that creeping consultant rot, the quiet realization that I could vanish tomorrow, and no one would notice until a drop-down menu misaligned on mobile. Then came the big pivot, a brand new initiative. They called it Pulse, Codexly's new flagship platform for enterprise teams. Darren pitched it as Slack meets Trello meets AI. In reality, it was 80% my sketches, 15% my surveys, and 5% the coffee-fueled wireframes I'd sent Darren one night when my heat was out and I was wearing 2 parkas indoors. He took that pitch deck, slapped on some slide transitions, and sold it to the board like he gave birth to it in his sleep. I watched the launch video in silence. He name-dropped a junior dev who had joined after the MVP was built, but not me. Never me. The comment section was full of "Wow, Darren's a genius," and such a visionary. Meanwhile, my blood pressure hit NASA launch velocity. That's when it hit me, this wasn't some glitch in the system. This was the system. I wasn't in the club, I was the help. A ghost with a Google Drive folder and no seat at the table. And yet, what Darren didn't know was that ghosts leave traces. And I was just getting started. They named it Pulse like it had a heartbeat. Like it wasn't just my sleepless nights and blistered wrists wearing a secondhand wrist brace from Walgreens. First time I saw the UI mock-up in Darren's investor deck, I nearly laughed. He'd taken the same exact layout I'd emailed him 4 months ago. Down to the sidebar gradient I called Corporate Grief Gray, and just swapped out my font. That's it, my hierarchy, my interaction flow, my dynamic filters. He didn't even change the damn button radius. I sat there watching the deck get streamed to the team in a Zoom I wasn't invited to. Watching the little investor faces nod along while Darren narrated my roadmap like a campfire ghost story. And here's where we leverage our AI-assisted tagging system to reduce workflow friction. My system. My logic, my data labels, my weeks of customer interviews, 2 of which happened while I was sick as hell on Dayquil and oatmeal. I recognized every line of it, every wireframe, every usability pain point that I'd flagged and redesigned and tested again. He even kept the dog mascot I added as a joke in the onboarding screens, rebranded it Pulse Pup. said it was part of their approachable intelligence initiative. The first NDA came in at 10:42 p.m. on a Friday. Subject line, just formalities, no rush. I opened the doc and saw what it really was, a retroactive intellectual property waiver. They were trying to wipe the slate, like I never touched the thing. Like I hadn't written every word of that onboarding sequence while hunched over a radiator with a space heater on my feet. It was phrased so nicely. To streamline asset alignment in preparation for potential partnerships, we'd love your signature on the enclosed mutual confidentiality agreement. Darren followed up 10 minutes later with a winky face emoji, and LMK if you need to review with legal smiling face with smiling eyes. I didn't sign, and I didn't wink back. Instead, I opened my personal email archive, found the contract from 11 months ago, buried under receipts for sushi and one unread love letter from a guy I ghosted in 2021. The subject line was, Kickoff Scope Agreement Pulse UX Module. Darren's signature sat right there next to mine. I was credited as lead on core system design, not contributor, not consultant, lead, and like a good little ghost, I saved that PDF to 3 separate hard drives and printed 2 copies, one of which I laminated and stuck between my tax forms and old college transcripts. After that, I went quiet. No righteous confrontation, no flaming Slack message. I knew better. Darren was the kind of guy who weaponized charm. If you raised a flag, he'd smile and pat your head while whispering not a team player into the board's ear. I didn't need vindication. I needed proof, so I started saving everything. Every doc revision, every timestamp, every design comment thread with my name on it before someone edited the attribution out. I kept a private Notion page called Gaslight Insurance. It got updated daily, and I started noticing Darren using my phrasing in pitch decks. The way they kept adding new engineers to Pulse without ever mentioning me in onboarding. One guy even DM'd me asking, hey, did you work on the first prototype? I'm reverse engineering the filtering system and your name's in the legacy Figma layer notes. Yes, I did, but officially, I was nobody. Just a ghost on the payroll, clocking hours to advise on interface strategy while the boys club Frankenstein my designs into FrankenPulse. My Slack access to #Pulse dev got sunsetted, Darren's word like I was a failed app feature. The interns I trained got promoted to full-time. They started ignoring my bug reports. Even the Pulse pup lost his animation. Just a frozen little dog now. A tombstone. The bitterness came slow, like a hairline fracture in my trust calcifying into something sharp. I started rereading my old messages, the way I used to pitch things with so much hope. This flow could be our signature interaction. Let's test for accessibility edge cases. If we hit 10K DAUs, maybe we add a badge system? They weren't just ideas, they were beliefs. I believed in this product. I believed I could earn my seat if I just worked hard enough. You can't earn your way into a room built without a door for you. That's when I stopped thinking of Pulse as ours. It wasn't ours, it was mine. And they'd stolen it while calling me family. Funny how betrayal doesn't come with a bang. Just a quiet moment when you realize the applause isn't for you. And never was. I didn't sign the NDA. I didn't scream. I archived. And I waited. The offer came in the form of a calendar invite titled, Leveling Up. @w/Darren speech balloon. No agenda. Just that emoji like a poisoned olive branch. He opened with charm, all toothy grins and startup aphorisms. You've been crushing it, he said, leaning back like a man about to knight me with a company mug. Everyone sees it. Honestly, we should have made this official a long time ago. Then came the scroll of benefits, typed out like a ransom note, $78K base before tax. 0 equity, we're capping stock grants till Series B, but maybe next round. Mandatory non-compete for 2 years, and here's the kicker, a retroactive IP assignment clause, binding me to all Pulse contributions past, present, and future. In legalese, I sign, I vanish. My fingerprints wiped clean with a stylized PDF signature and a fake welcome packet. He slid it across the screen like he was offering me a throne, not a padded cell. I smiled, tight, cordial, told him I'd give it a read. What I actually did was open the contract in preview, zoom into 200%, and scream into a pillow so loud my neighbor banged on the wall. 78,000. That was barely above intern wages in SF, minus rent, minus insurance, minus dignity. I checked the signature box section, already prefilled with my name, as if my agreement was inevitable, a formality. Like I should be grateful to be allowed into the kingdom I built. I didn't respond, so he did. My client hours dropped by half the next week. No explanation. My project board access went read-only. He moved our standing 1-1 to as needed. Suddenly, I was only copied on design tickets marked low priority, mostly grammar checks and hover state tweaks. I went from co-architect to digital janitor, quietly unpersoned. Then came Mateo, fresh out of some boot camp with a growth mindset and an ArtStation portfolio full of glassmorphic buttons. Darren introduced him in Slack like he was the second coming of Jobs, pumped to welcome Mateo as our new UX whisperer. He's going to bring a fresh lens to Pulse. I clicked into Mateo's first design file, stared at it for a full minute. He duplicated my dashboard flow, my navigation logic. He even reused my exact naming schema for components, just slapped a sleeker font on it and added a neon logo that looked like an energy drink for programmers. No attribution, no footnote, no based on, just mine, painted over, like I was roadkill on the creative highway. Demo day was the final insult. I wasn't invited, not even as a courtesy RSVP. I found the live stream link buried in a marketing intern's LinkedIn post. Watched the whole thing from my couch in mismatched socks, holding a mug of reheated coffee and heartbreak. Darren strutted onstage in his $600 hoodie, delivering his usual sermon about radical collaboration and harnessing chaos into coherence. Behind him, Pulse's latest build gleamed on a 40-foot screen, my layout, my flows, my animation sequences, presented like a miraculous immaculate conception. Matteo stood off to the side, all gelled hair and performative humility. At one point, he demoed the filter toggles I had literally sketched on the back of a CVS receipt, called it a novel way to reduce interaction fatigue. The crowd clapped like he'd invented the scroll wheel. I didn't cry, not even a twitch. I'd burned through tears weeks ago. What I felt now was pure surgical rage. The kind you don't act on fast, the kind that chills, the kind that calculates. Because here's the thing, Darren thought starving me out would force compliance, that I'd crawl back, desperate and willing. What he didn't know was that I don't beg, I archive, I pivot, I sharpen. So I started writing a different kind of spec, one for escape. Made a list of recruiters I'd helped with UX audits for their side projects. Began reaching out to former clients who still owed me favors. Quietly pinged a startup founder I'd once saved from a UX lawsuit. Even dug up that one CTO who told me, if you ever go independent, call me first. I wasn't powerless, I was patient. There's a difference. You can't kill the architect by locking the doors. She built the damn house. And I had the blueprints, still warm, still mine. It started like any other cleanup job. Just me, late at night, hunched over my MacBook like a digital archaeologist, sifting through Slack exports and forgotten folders, trying to piece together proof that I existed. That I mattered. That Pulse wasn't some immaculate product child birthed from Darren's imagination, but the Frankenstein I'd stitched together from caffeine, self-doubt, and a decade of user-centered design. First stop, HR. I fired off a simple email, curious, professional, deadpan. Could you forward me a copy of my consultant agreements, just doing some tax cleanup? 3 days later, a reply, hi. After reviewing your file, you don't seem to have formal documentation regarding your direct contributions to Pulse. Feel free to follow up if this was related to a different project. Different project? Lady, the only thing I ever worked on was Pulse. I practically bled it into the keyboard, so I pivoted. Next, I reached out to Justin from Series Seed Capital, one of the first VCs to back Codexly. We talked once at a product showcase, bonded over how broken Notion's mobile UI was. I sent a polite message, hey Justin, hope you're doing well. Quick cue, did Darren ever share the early Pulse white paper? I helped co-author the V1 but haven't seen my name attached lately. His reply, radio silence. That's when it hit me I was already gone, scrubbed, sanitized, like an ink stain under bleach. I logged into our old shared Google Drive folder, gone. Not just my files, everything. Renamed, reorganized, re-owned. My folders were replaced with newer, glossier versions, all attributed to Matteo or the newly anointed core team. Even the Figma files I'd worked in had version histories that abruptly stopped 2 weeks before Matteo was hired. It was like watching your own gravestone get pressure washed. Slack, useless. The design channel archives had been deactivated to reduce clutter. Confluence. Darren had purged every legacy contributor note and embedded a shiny new history starting 3 months ago. It was deliberate, surgical, like I'd never touched a line, never diagrammed a flow, never sat up until sunrise reworking UI for accessibility because Darren suddenly cared about DEI optics the night before an investor call. I wasn't just being erased, I was being disassembled. And then, I remembered the contract, not the sanitized NDA Darren sent post facto. No, the original one. The kickoff scope agreement he drafted back when Codexly was still 3 idiots in a coworking space, and I was their best-kept secret. I'd asked for clear scope. Darren, in his usual cocky haste, had thrown together a DocuSign template and emailed it to me at 2:14 a.m. with the subject line, just to make this official, lol. I searched my Gmail archive, there it was, and read since last November. Subject, Pulse Logic Module Scope, confidential. I opened it, there it was. Paragraph 6, bolded like a forgotten blessing. Contractor name redacted shall serve as lead UX consultant and co-architect of the Pulse Logic Module and Interface Interaction Systems. Signed, stamped, time logged. Darren's sloppy e-signature sitting next to mine like a drunk snake. I stared at that line for a long time, let it sink in, because that wasn't just a contract, that was a grenade. And Darren, the idiot, forgot to cut the fuse. It was all I needed, just one legitimate timestamp link tying me to the spine of Pulse. Enough to raise questions, enough to crack the illusion, enough to set fire to a room built on lies. I printed it twice, uploaded it to 3 encrypted drives. 1 copy went to a private folder labeled "Break Glass if Screwed." Up until that moment, been trying to reclaim something, credit, visibility, fairness. But standing there in my apartment, contract in hand, surrounded by the ghost of work they tried to memory hole, I realized something else. I didn't want credit anymore. I wanted consequences. Darren built an empire on erasure, on charisma and vapor and shiny fonts. He thought I'd roll over. He thought the silence meant defeat. But he forgot something. Ghosts haunt. And I just remembered how to rattle chains. It started as a whisper, like most things in tech that end in blood. A tweet from a junior engineer at some VC-backed analytics firm, hearing Codexly's about to make a monster move eyes. Then a private LinkedIn message from a recruiter I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. So proud of your work on Pulse. Big win ahead, and finally, a Slack ping from a former intern I'd trained back when Pulse was still duct tape and delusion. Is it true about the $500 million? $500 million. That's when I knew Darren was about to cash out. The puzzle pieces fit together like betrayal Tetris. The code freeze, the rushed rebranding, the scrubbed contributor list. They weren't just cleaning house, they were staging it, getting ready to sell. And apparently, someone was willing to drop north of $500M to buy the whole glittering fraud. But what Darren didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that ghosts leave fingerprints. And I'd left mine on every floorboard of that haunted mansion. The email came on a Wednesday, 6:17 p.m. Subject line, Codexly IP verification inquiry. No greeting, just straight to it. Dear Redacted, you're conducting a due diligence process on behalf of our client related to Codexly Inc. Your name appears in early documentation concerning the Pulse architecture, specifically in reference to the logic module. Can you confirm your involvement and whether your contributions were contractually assigned to Codexly at the time? It was from a firm I didn't recognize, one of those white glove and a law outfits that sound more like colognes than companies. The kind of people who wear expensive glasses and say material breached the way most people say please pass the salt. For one long minute, I stared at the email like it was a portal. Because that stray sentence, your name appears in early documentation, was the crack. The overlooked hairline fracture Darren forgot to seal. Somehow, somewhere, that original contract he'd written at 2 a.m. in a WeWork conference room, the one that named me as lead on Pulse's core logic, had been uploaded into the data room, probably by some exhausted analyst batch dumping legacy files into a box folder. A single forgotten PDF buried in hundreds of due diligence docs, and it had tripped an alarm. I checked the file properties on the contract in my archive again. Yep, my name, timestamped, metadata intact. The same version I'd printed, laminated, and backed up across 3 cloud drives. I could recite the document code like scripture. Some part of me didn't believe it at first, that after all the scrubbing and silence and careful exile, my name had survived, a ghost in the machine. I drafted a careful reply. No drama, no capital letters, no attached thermonuclear threats. Just, yes, I contributed to the Pulse logic module under a signed agreement dated X. I retain a copy. Please advise if additional documentation is required. I hit send, then sat back and smiled. Because here's the thing about data rooms, they aren't curated showcases. They're messy, sprawling graveyards of past deals, sloppy signatures, and digital DNA. If Darren had thought one step ahead, he would have filtered every contract, scrubbed every metadata tag, cross-referenced every name against current contributors. But he didn't. He was arrogant. He was in a rush. And somewhere in that rush, he left me in the vault. I could feel the pressure starting to ripple. The acquirer had clearly hit pause. You don't ask about IP unless there's a legal hold. Darren had spent months selling a sanitized fairy tale, and now there was a shadow in it, a name that didn't match the sanitized cap table. Mine. I checked Pulse's press kit on their website, still no mention of me. I checked the new pitch deck, Mateo's grinning face beside a headline that said built by passion. I checked the Crunchbase profile, Darren listed as visionary founder with a bullet point that read, inventor of Pulse's proprietary collaboration logic. My logic, my system, my name, and now, my leverage. It was a spark, nothing more, not a win, not a victory parade, but a spark. And when you've been buried under a decade of unpaid overtime and weaponized invisibility, a spark is everything. Didn't know what would happen next, but I knew this, the deal wasn't clean. The data wasn't clean, and Darren's legacy was about to get very, very messy. I clicked send on the email like I was flicking a switch in a nuclear silo. Yes, that is my signature. And yes, the module contains logic and interface systems I designed under the attached contract. Please confirm receipt. 12 words, 1 attachment. No threats, no flair, no exclamation marks. Just facts. The kind that make billion-dollar lawyers flinch. By the next morning, the whispers had stopped. They turned into silence. Strategic silence, the kind of silence that means lawyers are huddling in a windowless room somewhere downtown, staring at a PDF that wasn't supposed to exist. I waited. I drank half a cup of coffee. Then the first call came in. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then a text from HR, hey, just circling back. Would love to chat about your status with us. Smiley face, weaponized chirpiness. I could practically hear the faux casual tone underlined in fear. Then Darren, not by email, not through Slack, he called twice. Left a voicemail, hey, wild week, huh, so? Long story short, we realized there might have been some legacy paperwork floating around. Nothing serious, just a cleanup thing. Could really use your help making sure everything lines up so we can all win here. All. And here he was scared. The next email hit an hour later. Subject line, one-time advisory clarification. Inside was a PDF labeled Mutual Acknowledgement of Prior Contributions. What it really was, a retroactive waiver, stripped clean of credit. No mention of lead, no mention of co-architect, no mention of anything except that I was a freelance UX advisor who may have provided informal support. In exchange for my signature, he offered $15,000 and a thank you line in the product changelog. A changelog, like I was a deprecated feature. I didn't scream, I didn't reply. I just opened a new tab and Googled, Startup IP Litigation Attorney San Francisco. Found a name I recognized, a woman who'd spoken at a bootstrappers meetup about exit scams and how not to get steamrolled in an acquisition. Sent her a short note, attached the contract. No embellishments. She replied in 6 minutes, you have leverage, let's schedule a call. I booked the call for the next morning, then turned off my phone, not for drama, for safety, because I knew what was coming. The second wave hit before sunset. Darren's assistant pinged me via my personal LinkedIn, offering to personally courier the waiver for a signature. She used phrases like just a housekeeping item and would love to get this cleared up before our Friday milestone. Friday milestone. Code for closing day. I stared at the message for a long time. My hands were shaking, not from weakness, from clarity. This was the moment everything snapped into place. They weren't trying to thank me. They were trying to bury me before the check cleared. I sat in the dark for a while, thinking about every time I let it slide. Every time I watched someone else present my deck. Every time I smiled through being sidelined because I didn't want to be difficult. Every damn time I traded credit for the chance to stay in the room. Well, the room was on fire now, and I had the gasoline. That night, my lawyer sent the acquiring firm a formal notice. My client, name redacted, asserts contribution of IP directly embedded in the Pulse Logic module, protected under the attached agreement. Any acquisition proceeding without addressing this claim may constitute a breach of contract and violation of intellectual property rights. Next day, the deal was paused, formally. Announced via a carefully worded blog post. After careful consideration, we are momentarily delaying our strategic integration to ensure comprehensive alignment. Comprehensive alignment. Translation, we found a ghost in the wires and she has a lawyer now. Darren emailed again. This time, no emojis, no jokes, let's talk. We can work this out like adults, but I didn't want to work it out. I wanted the truth to drag its ragged bones through the daylight. And I knew that if I blinked now, if I backed down, if I took the check and swallowed the lie, I'd vanish forever. So I didn't blink. I printed everything again. I backed it up 3 more times, and I waited, not as the ghost, but as the reckoning. The first real crack came via Twitter. Not a headline, those take time. Just a single tweet from an analyst known for sniffing out M and a rot. Hearing Codexly's deal might be wobbling. Data room issues? #Startup life. Within an hour, TechCrunch had picked it up. Within 2, the valuation rumors started sliding. Within 4, Darren purged his LinkedIn open to opportunities badge like it was leaking radiation. By the next morning, he was bleeding all over the cap table. Investors started circling. I know because one of them, an angel who once tried to poach me for a health tech startup back in 2019, DM'd me directly. Just 3 words, what did he hide? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I'd already done what I came to do. You see, there's a myth in Silicon Valley that betrayal ends with a keynote, with righteous fury and polished slides. But the truth? It ends in silence, in long, slow unravelings. In the way Darren's team's Slack channel disappeared overnight. In the hush that follows when a founder stops returning calls and starts scheduling quick syncs with legal at 10 o'clock p.m. He fired Matteo first, spun it as realignment, then the intern who'd helped clone my design schema, then the content lead who once asked me if accessibility was still trendy. All gone, collateral, like rats sacrificed to keep the ship afloat while the hull was already torn open. Then the Slack deletions started. Entire threads vanished. Years of conversation, documentation, memes. It was as if Darren thought if he just deleted fast enough, the past would stop echoing. But he didn't know I'd exported everything months ago. Slack JSON files, timestamped screenshots, raw Figma logs with design ownership metadata. Even the Zoom call recordings, auto-saved to my cloud when I was the one hosting demos no one else could explain. One by one, I handed those files over to the acquiring firm's legal team. No drama, no demands, just an index of truth with a cover letter. Please see attached material relevant to contributor verification and product origin. The file folder was named Proof of Ghost. Darren, meanwhile, was spinning his little narrative like a rabid DJ. She was just a contractor. She's confused about her role. She got too emotionally invested. He said I was difficult, erratic, that I'd declined a generous offer and was now retaliating for being professionally outpaced. Professionally outpaced by Matteo, the guy who once asked me what heuristics meant. The story he tried to paint was that I was unstable. The evidence I provided, that I'd been the only thing keeping that product stable. Investors started calling each other. Board members started asking for copies of the contracts Darren signed in the early scrappy phase. and one of them, God bless chaos, leaked my contract to a journalist under the headline, Ghost in the Repo. Did Codexly erase its architect? Suddenly, I wasn't just a footnote, I was the story. But here's the part that surprised even me. I didn't feel triumph, not exactly. No joy, no victory lap, just a quiet, glacial calm. The kind of calm you feel watching a house burn that you used to live in, when you escape from with nothing but your skin and the blueprints they tried to bury you with. I stopped checking the news after day 3, stopped checking Slack, stopped reading the investor threads and blog comment speculation. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. The truth was out there now, leaking through their drywall, staining their nice white pitch deck like blood through linen. I hadn't demanded justice. I hadn't made threats. I just lit the match and let the oxygen do the work. Somewhere out there, Darren was watching his empire hemorrhage value in real time, and I made tea. I folded laundry. I opened my laptop and started drafting something new. Not because I had to, because I could. Because when the ghost walks out of the machine, she doesn't haunt. She builds elsewhere. The acquisition died on a Monday, not with a press release, but a quietly updated blog post titled Reassessing Market Alignment, a piece of PR mulch so vague it could have meant anything from bankruptcy to a lunch reschedule. But insiders knew. Hell, everyone knew. The rival firm had walked, completely. A ghost in the data room had spooked the sharks. And Darren's golden exit had evaporated like a startup's ethics after Series B. By Tuesday, Codexly's valuation was down 37%. By Wednesday, 3 board members issued a unanimous statement. We are grateful to Darren for his vision, but feel it is time for new leadership. Translation, we're not going down with this idiot. By Friday, Darren was gone, just gone, his Slack avatar grayed out, his LinkedIn updated to exploring. That word again, exploring, as if he'd left voluntarily. As if this whole thing wasn't a collapse dressed up in corporate drag. In the quiet that followed, my lawyer called. She didn't bother with preamble, mid-6 figures. No gag clause, no attribution either, but they won't contest anything you claim publicly. I didn't speak for a moment, just stared out my window at the power lines. So much of me had imagined this moment feeling like victory. A cinematic swell of music, maybe, some epic one-liner. Instead, I felt nothing, just release. Like finally exhaling a breath I'd been holding for 3 years. I told her take it. She said, already did. We both hung up like it was any other Tuesday. Later that night, Darren tried to claw one last scrap of narrative from the bones. He posted a thread on Twitter, 12 tweets long, faux humble tone, full of words like inflection point, core learnings, and stepping back to reconnect with what matters. Said the acquisition didn't align with internal cultural priorities. Claimed the company was pursuing a bold new trajectory. No one bought it. The quote tweets were brutal. One simply read, bro got ghosted by his own MVP. Another, turns out the pulse was hers all along. I didn't retweet, didn't reply, didn't even favorite. I just opened Slack, navigated to the last active Codexly thread I hadn't muted, and clicked Leave Workspace. A tiny gray message popped up. You've left Codexly HQ? Then I uninstalled Figma. Not because I couldn't use it again, because I wouldn't use that instance again. The ghost had no business haunting the old walls. I booked a flight to a country I'd never been to, didn't look at the return date, didn't pack my laptop. Just to carry on, a good pair of boots and the backup hard drive, not because I needed it, but because it reminded me of who I became when everyone tried to pretend I wasn't there. I checked into a quiet villa on a hill, ordered wine at 2 p.m., and watched the sun do what it always does. Rise, burn, fade, unbothered, no fanfare, no justice parade. Just silence and finally peace. I wasn't euphoric, I wasn't giddy, I was done. And sometimes that's better than winning. Codexly limped on, no announcement, no pivot. Just a steady downgrade, feature rollbacks, LinkedIn exits, Slack statuses frozen mid-optimism. Mateo started a YouTube channel about minimalist design. The interns dispersed like confetti caught in a downpour. The blog stopped posting. The roadmap stopped moving. Even Pulse Pup, bless his little PNG face, was quietly replaced with a generic loading spinner. Darren was scrubbed like a stain. No thank you post, no exit interview, not even a Medium essay about learning through failure. Just a memory, brittle and incomplete. People still whispered about what happened, tried to piece together the fall from screenshots and Slack leaks. But nobody really knew, except me. I watched it all from a distance, like a fire I didn't need to tend. The new leadership tried to rally, hired a brand recovery strategist, launched a stripped-down Pulse Lite for small teams, but it never clicked. You can't sell authenticity after you bury its architect. Meanwhile, the rival firm, the one that walked, reached out again. Not officially, quietly. Different lawyer this time, different tone. They weren't interested in Codexly anymore, but they were interested in Pulse. The real Pulse, the version that worked. The version still sitting in encrypted folders with my notes, my wireframes, my decision trees annotated in neurotic detail. I said yes. No press, no promises, just a consulting agreement with no NDA and no pretense. They got a product, I got respect, and I kept the name off the damn website. It wasn't about recognition anymore. It was about truth. And the truth was this. The thing that collapsed Codexly wasn't a lawsuit. It wasn't the contract. It wasn't even me. It was a single line of metadata. See what showed up in that due diligence report, the line that tripped the lawyers and blew up Darren's golden parachute, wasn't the PDF I'd archived or the timestamped screenshots I'd mailed in a padded envelope to my lawyer. It was something far smaller. Buried deep in an early prototype of Pulse's interface was a toggle button. It was labeled, dev only a /b routing v0.3 ux, my name, just a breadcrumb, just a comment, just truth. Darren had scrubbed the decks, rewritten the history, buried every trace. But he missed one thing, that line, that tiny whisper of authorship, that name. It made it into the data room by mistake, got scraped by some automated audit bot, flagged by some exhausted junior associate at 2 a.m., and it unraveled everything. Funny thing about metadata, it always survives the pitch deck. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.